Hey everyone, welcome back to the channel. So today I'm going to be taking a look at the Transformers Studio Series 86 Voyager class Ironhide. Let's start off by taking a look at the packaging and then I'll get into the review. So of course up front we have Transformers on the side, Studio Series 8617. There's Ironhide at the bottom with a very classic Autobot symbol. This is an 8+ figure. There's a really cool artwork shot of Ironhide with his blaster. I think that overall looks quite cool. There's an open window displaying the figure when it would be in the packaging. There is the Transformers of the movie logo right there, which overall looks pretty cool. And at the top there is another the Transformers the movie logo as well. On the side, of course, we have 8617 Studio Series on the side. Another really cool artwork shot of Ironhide, really close up his face and chest, and it is a Voyager class figure. As for the back, this figure transforms in 26 steps. Of course, it does include a backdrop. All the Studio Series figures include a backdrop. This is the Decepticon shuttle ambush from the 86 movie. And of course, two product shots, one of the robot and van truck mode, which overall looks pretty cool. As for the final side, another really cool battle pose with his blaster, 86, and of course, the Autobot Authentic logo at the bottom. And that is pretty much it for the packaging. So let's now get into the review. Here we have Ironhide in his van alt mode. Let's start off by taking a look at the details. Starting at the very front, some really nice silver for that front grille section with some headlights as well. Really well sculpted. There's actually some red windshield wipers and some really nice transparent blue plastic for the window. Unfortunately, you can see a bit of kibble. This is actually the back of the head. It doesn't look that bad. As for the top, overall pretty plain. We do have two tabs there. That's really mostly for weapon storage, which I'll get to in just a sec. As for the side, overall not looking too bad. So of course, the main complaint with the previous Ironhide was there was a lot of hinges and flaps and panels that was on the Earthrise version, which I'll make that comparison in just a sec. So I think this figure definitely improves upon that. There's a few hinges here and there. There's one there and there. Doesn't look too bad. I do have a complaint with color matching though. As you can see, there's quite a few different shades of red. There's some here and the hinges are slightly different. As of the top, there's several different shades of red. So that's a bit unfortunate in that aspect, but everything else I think is definitely a major improvement over the Earthrise and Siege version. As for the wheels, I'm actually really glad they are not mushroom peg. Overall, really well detailed. There's some really nice silver for the intersection and some black for the tire, and overall the figure rolls quite well across the ground. As for the back, overall quite plain, really just some silver for the bumper. You can of course imagine a license plate being there, and usual red for the back. As for the other side, of course, the exact same detail with some really nice transparent blue for those windows, overall looking quite cool and not too bad kibble-wise. And of course on the bottom, overall quite clean and compact. And that is pretty much it for detail-wise. Let's now get down to his two accessories, which I actually do quite like. So he does come with two identical little pistols, very classic and simple to Ironhide. I do quite like, and they are also blast piece compatible. And there are several ways you can store them. So the first being is those two tabs that you see at the top. So there is a slot on either side, really doesn't matter, and you can just plug that into place. Getting the second one, you can do the same, just plugging that into place. And there's the first way. Not my preferred look. I prefer the second way, which I'll show in just a sec, but this is the main way they've shown on the box, and of course in many other reviews. But overall, pretty cool. I actually really do like how there's two options, and to truth be told, when I purchased this figure, I did not even know the second option was an option. I thought the only way you could store them was on top, so I'm actually pleasantly surprised. So the second way is you just have to take these off just like that. Just untap them. You actually have to flip to the bottom of the figure, so there's two tabs there, and of course using the exact same slots as before, you can tap them into place just like that. And I actually definitely prefer this look. They almost become like the exhaust pipes, or you can imagine they're like blasters on the back, so you can have some rear protection in the battle, which I actually do quite like. And again, since they are blast piece compatible, you could add some really cool effects pieces and look like there's smoke shooting out of his pipes and him blasting off into battle, so you can recreate some really cool battle scenes if you want to. So let's now get down to a few Ironhide comparisons. So first up here he is with the Earthrise version. This came out in the Earthrise line. Of course, it was an Amazon exclusive pack that came with Prowl, which overall I think that pack was pretty good. I actually really do like the Earthrise Ironhide. I really do like his cool kind of riot shield in the robot mode. In this mode, I do have quite a few problems. I do have to say what's actually kind of interesting is the head ends up pretty much in the exact same position on both versions. Of course, you can see the head right through that plastic, and it's also right through here. And I'm actually really glad they scrapped that whole clear plastic window. It's a lot less visible on this version, as you can see, quite visible on that one. And of course, the main thing we need to talk about is, of course, the side profile. A lot of people had a lot of problems with all the panels and pieces and hinges, and I had to agree. There were some sections I really didn't like this weird random black section there. And also on this copy or this version of Ironhide, there was quite a few color mismatching with the red. Of course, there was this really dark shade of red and some lighter shades. So I think both Ironhides do have that problem. I think they really need to nail the color matching with the reds. But as for the more clean look between the two, I think they definitely did a better job with the Stu Series version. And of course, this one does not come with that huge riot shield that's on top right now. And of course, the huge main fix that we've been longing for a very long time is no feet sticking at the end. Of course, the Siege and Earthrise version both have that problem with the feet sticking at the end, which is kind of funny because the main reason why they made the Earthrise version was, of course, is to fix this whole feet thing. They were hoping by attaching the shield, it would fix that. And it did an okay job. You can still see a bit of an outline of a foot, but here it's way more clean, way more compact, and actually looks super cool. And now for another Ironhide comparison. Of course, I'll bring out all three at one time, but just want to do them alone. Here he is with the Siege Ironhide, which I overall quite liked, but of course, the main problem with this one is the feet really just stick out at the end of the whole shield, or a piece on top is not present. Of course, this was the more Cybertronian, war-torn look, and of course, the Earthrise one was the more Earth-based look. But honestly, I think this one definitely nails the classic Ironhide the best. That is just my opinion. And now for all three at one time, I'm going to zoom out just a tad bit so I can get them all in view. Here we have all of them together, and I think they look pretty cool. Which one's my favorites? I'm not really sure. They all have pros and cons. Again, I really do like the Riot Shield in his robot mode. For the vehicle mode, it doesn't work as great. Again, there's pros and cons with a lot of them. I love to run through all of them, but there is a lot to talk about. So overall, they do look quite cool. Let me know in the comment section down below of these three Ironhides, which one do you like the most. I'm going to take these two off to the side, and that is pretty much it for Ironhide's van alt mode. So let's now get down to transformation into his robot mode. Now for transformation into the robot mode, what you're going to do is separate this entire section here from the front part. So you're just going to pry this apart just like that. And of course, there is tabs on this piece right here, and there are slots on the underside of this piece right here. You can actually open this all up like that. You can then separate these two pieces right here. There's a tab on this side and a slot on that side. You can actually bring this panel out like that all the way back. Then you can actually collapse this down. Do the same thing on the other side, so just bring this out and fold this piece down just like that. You can actually separate the arms from the back portion. As you can see, of course, there's tabs on this outer section here, and there are slots right there. You can flip the hands out like that. You can separate the arms just like that. And how this was tabbed together is there's a tab on the inside of the arm on this, and of course a slot on the other side. And then what you're going to do is actually disconnect this entire assembly. Just bring that down. That's actually the front grille section. And then what you can do is actually bring the head up. You can bring these little pieces in right here, just flip those in, and you can actually fold this entire assembly in, and that should attach all nice and flush. You can actually bring this down, and you're going to rotate this entire assembly all the way around just like that, and then you can bring this section down. That will tab into place just like that. And as for the shoulder and arm, there is a tab right there and a slot right there that's going to tab right into place. Do the same thing on the other side, just like that. As for this entire back piece, you're just going to compress that up just like that. It's not really the most secure connection. These little tabs are just supposed to kind of sit in those crevices and just kind of keep it in place. It's a little bit secure. I would have been nicer if it was a bit more tight. As for the legs, you can actually separate these panels right here, just separate the legs in half, and then you can actually bring this entire assembly out, and you can actually go to the bottom right here. You're going to flip these panels in like that. You can also grab these panels, compress them down, and then you can actually flip these back in place. These will become the feet, just like that. As for these panels, you just bring them down, and after you straighten everything up, here we have 86 Ironhide in his robot mode. Let's take a look at the details. Here we have Ironhide in his robot mode. Let's start off by taking a look at the details, starting at the very top with that head sculpt. Some really nice silver for the face, some blue for the eyes, and some red for that main helmet section. As for, of course, the chest, really nice blue for the entire windscreen or windows section, looking very cool. Some little windshield wiper details, a very classic autobot symbol done in silver and red, and some silver for this entire kind of stomach, and some gray there too, which overall looks pretty cool. And if you actually do look to the side, I actually really do like how this is angled. It looks quite cool. In my opinion, some more details there. And of course, for the entire waist and top of the legs, actually, I do quite like this kind of creamy grayish white, because of course the rest of the figure is done in really dark colors, really dark red, dark blue, dark gray, you know, for the hands and the shoulders. So I'm actually really glad there's some nice white there. I think that adds a little bit more color and pop to the figure. That's just my opinion. As for the arms, really nice dark gray for the shoulders, a nice dark red for this whole entire top arm section, and some light red for the forearm, and some gray for the hands. So of course there is a bit of two different shades of red in this mode. I'm perfectly fine with that. I think in the car mode it just looks a little bit odd. That's just my opinion. I think this actually looks pretty cool. As for the legs, overall design-wise and appearance-wise, it doesn't look too bad. Unfortunately, it does seem as though the Ironhides do have a running theme of panels on the legs, because if you have the previous two versions of Ironhide, the Earthrise and Siege, they also have some panels on the legs. Of course, those look way worse than these do. You can actually see some mech-tech ports on those previous two figures. You can't see that here, which is good. Again, I think appearance-wise, it doesn't look too bad. Of course, we actually have some more of that transparent blue there, which looks pretty cool. I just have to say, I think the connections could have been better. This could just be a my copy type of thing. It's really just down to tolerance, because there is a tab on the inside, and it's supposed to tab into this section on the inside. I think so, and it just doesn't stay. It just doesn't stay. It aligns up properly. It just never will actually stay tabbed in. It just kind of keeps pushing out. So really just a tolerance issue. If I were to be, I guess, nitpicky or just a little bit picky, too picky probably, there is kind of a hinge sticking at the front. Not the prettiest in my opinion. It is painted red, which is good, but still I would rather have had the hinge like on the back of the legs. I think that would have looked a little bit better. But if you actually do look at the back, overall pretty clean. Of course, these tabs are actually there for a reason. They're weapon storage in the truck and also in the remote mode, which we'll get to in just a sec. But everything else is overall quite clean. Of course, really not that much waffling. Of course, you do have the bumper on the back, which I really don't consider kibble. I think it looks pretty cool back there. Interesting enough, if you actually don't have the other two versions, the Earthrise and the Siege one, their bumper also ends up pretty much in the exact same place. So there is quite a few similarities as of design-wise and placement-wise between the three. And there's, of course, a little bit of hollowness in the back of the arms, but that doesn't look too bad. And if you're wondering if there's similarities as a transformation, there's actually quite a few. The arms actually do hinge up in the exact same way with the other two versions, and you also do flip the torso around with the other two versions as well. So there is some similarities in transformation, but of course, as of mold-wise, completely different. So let's now get down to articulation. So the head can look up and down, and of course side to side. As for the arm, it can actually hinge out, and I actually really do like how they fill this in, because typically, of course, when you move the arm, there's typically just kind of a gap between the shoulder and the torso, and it looks bad. I'm actually really glad they filled it in, and it actually looks pretty good design-wise, kind of mechanical detailing. And of course, you can go in, a bicep rotation, elbow bends, and what's actually really caught me by surprise, I did not know this, is there's actually a wrist rotation. So of course, typically with Deluxes and Voyagers, when you fold in the hand and any form, typically there is not a wrist rotation, but on this figure, there is one, which I was very surprised. I was like, what? That's crazy. As for the rest of the articulation, there is a waist rotation, completely unhindered. If you do flip this panel up, it can kick that far forward, that far back. There is a swivel and a knee bend, and there is also, of course, a kick out to the side. Very tight hinge there. As you can see, of course, the panels just tend to kind of lift up. I do apologize about that. I will have to fix that. But of course, the full splits. And as for the foot, there is a pivot in and a little bit out, and of course a down, which that is really due to transformation. And that is pretty much it for the articulation. Overall, pretty impressed. I'm very impressed in my opinion. Definitely was not expecting a wrist rotation, especially because of course you do flip the hand in. I was really not expecting that. So that is it for articulation and details. Let's now get down to his 2 accessories. You can actually store them in 3 different ways. 2 of them being is actually on the back. So the first way is actually utilizing the same 2 tabs you use in the truck mode. So of course, same connection, there is a slot and a tab, and you can just store these on the back. I actually really do like this because from my memory, if it serves me correctly, in the G1 show, Ironhide never really had a weapon. Typically, he was usually hand-to-hand combat, and I actually kind of like that about him. So if you want more of a clean, normal combat look, you know, just hand-to-hand, fist-to-fist combat, you can actually put the weapons on the back, which I don't think they look too bad. Even from a side profile, I think they actually look pretty cool back there. And he can use his fists and, you know, fight off some Decepticons, which I think is pretty cool. As for the next way on the back, which definitely is my least favorite, this is one that you cannot use in the other mode. You can actually use these tabs right here, of course, same slots, those sections right there, and you just plug them in like that. I don't really like this. I think it's a bit odd. Of course, they just stick out way too much. That's just my opinion. And of course, if you do use this method of storage, you will have to have some added space because, of course, they do stick out quite a bit. I guess they probably just did this because it is kind of cool when you can see like the barrels from the weapon if you store on the back. That usually is pretty cool. I do have to say probably the weapon storage for the Siege and the Earthrise Ironhide were a lot better. You could store his hammer and his shield on the back. I think that worked a lot better than this is. I think it just looks a bit odd to me. That's just my opinion. As for, of course, the third and final way, you probably already guessed it. You can put the weapons in his hand, which I think is pretty cool. This is probably my preferred method and how I will most likely be storing them. That is it for the accessories, details, and articulations. So let's now get down to a few comparisons. Here he is with the Earthrise version. Size-wise, he is actually a little bit bigger. The Studio Series is a little bit smaller. Of course, this one always tends to lean to the side because the shield is on his back and the weapons on the other hand. It's a bit unfortunate. Sometimes he does wobble. I do apologize about that. But size-wise, he's a little bit bigger. There is some pros and cons to both of them. As I said, I really do like the whole kind of Riot battle shield, and I really do like the feature how you can use the whole handle and it pops out 4 really cool barrels. I do have to say though, as for the other accessory, I prefer these pistols over the black one. I never really liked that. I really didn't think it suited Ironhide. That's just my opinion. As for, of course, as you can see, mold-wise, completely different. There is no similarities in mold. Of course, design-wise, you can see a few. Of course, there's actually the same kind of placement of that dark gray, almost black as the shoulders. I also do prefer the transparent blue for the chest rather than the clear for several reasons. I don't like that ugly hinge there. That doesn't look the greatest. And as you saw earlier in the video, you, of course, store the head inside there. Actually, both of them do. And you can clearly see the head in the truck mode. This one, it's a little bit more hidden. You can still see it a bit, but not nearly as bad as this. So definitely, I probably prefer design-wise, I probably prefer this one over the Earthrise one, but I do really like that shield. The shield is pretty cool. And if you want a back view, as I mentioned earlier, of course, if I do remove this shield here, you can actually see the bumper does end up pretty much in the same place. Of course, his bumper is quite a bit more compact and pressed in there, so not as obvious. But as for the storage of the weapons, I think they probably did a better job on the Earthrise one because the storage there is pretty cool. And the pistol, you could use that MechTick port. The pistols on Studio Series version, I do like them on the back of the legs, but I don't really like that one. So yes, there is more options, but I really don't like all of them on this one. That's just my opinion. But of course, flipping to the front, I did take off the shield if you wanted more of a clean look. It kind of makes them probably less chunky, but overall pretty cool. As of head sculpt, I'm not really sure. I might actually prefer the Studio Series one. Let me know in the comment section down below, of course, of the 3 Ironhides, the Siege, Earthrise, and Studio Series, which one do you like the most? I'm going to take the Earthrise one off to the side. And as for one final Ironhide comparison, here it is with a Siege version, which I always really like that really cool battle hammer. This is, of course, the more war-torn Cybertronian version. This is more the Earth-based one, so there is quite a few differences here. Honestly, I don't really mind the clear plastic here because you can't see that hinge, and there's actually some really cool detail there overall, just a kind of a side perspective overall, just showing that. And as I mentioned before, of course, for some reason, all three Ironhides have that side leg kibble, as you can see there, and there was some mech ports. So I do have to say, of the kibble that's on the Ironhides, this probably looks the best. I still don't like the placement of it, because you can see that ugly hinge, but I honestly don't really know why there was mech ports on the side of his legs. I don't really think you ever used it. It could have been maybe possibly for the weaponizer gimmick, like you could attach cog there. I don't really remember, but overall, that is pretty much it for the comparisons and the robot mode. That is pretty much it. So let's now get down to the final thoughts. So now for the final thoughts for the Transformers Studio Series Voyager Class 86 Ironhide. I think overall I actually do quite like this figure. Starting in the van truck mode, definitely very classic and original to the G1 show. I think they really stayed true. Overall, pretty cool details. Of course, we do have the really nice transparent blue plastic for the front of the truck, the window, and it's actually really nice with this one because you really can't see the head in there that much. I think it does a lot better than the Earthrise one. It was clear plastic and you could see that ugly hinge and the head right through it. As for the other details, actually not that bad. Of course, what's really good with this one is there is no mushroom peg wheels, which is always nice, and it rolls pretty well, and the silver on the wheels actually looks pretty cool. As for the other parts of the truck, not bad. Of course, the main complaint with the Earthrise one is there was quite a few hinges and panels on the sides of the truck, so really it wasn't that smooth and cohesive of a truck. It looked a bit odd. I do have to say, I think they did do a better job with this one. A lot more smooth and cohesive, but unfortunately the color matching of the red was definitely off. I could obviously see the darker shades and the lighter shades of red just really didn't look that good. I'm not really sure if that was their intent, if that was on purpose. Sometimes I do think they do it on purpose, other times not so much. I think this was just the best they could do. I do have to say though, I think the different shades of red in the robot mode right here, I think it works better than the truck mode. That is just my opinion. As for the weapon storage, there is two different ways. You can actually store them on top. Not really my preferred look. The second way is you can actually store it on the underside of the truck, which I think is pretty cool because they can act as the exhaust pipes for the truck mode. So you can actually plug in some really cool effects pieces and have them blasting off into battle, which I always thought was pretty cool in my opinion. As for transformation into the robot mode, I think it's okay. It's a bit fiddly sometimes, especially where the legs are concerned, because there's quite a few panels and hinges. And unfortunately with the panels, of course, this could just be my copy. They typically do not tab into place. I know there is a tab on the inside of the panel, and there is actually a slot on the side of the leg, and they do line up, and it just never wants to stay in a tab into place. That's really, of course, tolerance wise. I really wouldn't fault the figure or anything. It's just tolerance. As for the figure itself and the design, I'm actually quite impressed. The head sculpt looks super cool. I honestly really don't fault the Earthrise or the Siege one any. Of course, the Earthrise and the Siege are quite similar. I do think there is some sculpting changes though, but they are quite similar in design as well. I really don't have any personal preference of the head sculpt. I think they overall look all pretty good. And everything else is really cool. Again, another plus to having the transparent blue for the chest and not the clear, because with the Earthrise one, you can see that ugly hinge and see right through there. That doesn't look that great. I do prefer the blue. That's just my opinion. And for the other parts of the figure, overall pretty clean. Really not that much waffling. Everything, of course, the inside of the legs, overall pretty filled in. The back of the legs, you can see right here, not too bad. And there is, of course, a bit of hollowness on the insides or the back sides of the arms, which, of course, that's really due to transformation because you actually do flip the hands in for transformation, so I can easily give that a pass. And as for, of course, storage for the pistols, you can store them in his hands, as you can see right here. You can store them on the back of the legs, utilizing the same tabs that you used, of course, before in the trucker mode. And the third way, which you can only use in this mode, is there's actually tabs on the bumper piece on his back, which you can use. Probably definitely my least favorite of the storage of this entire figure. Don't really like it, of course. It's okay from the front view. You do have to be aware if you do attach him, it does stick out quite a bit from the back, so you'll actually have to add some added space for that. So do be aware of that. But overall, a pretty good figure. Articulation wise is definitely a surprise. So usually, of course, with deluxes, usually this is how you transform a deluxe. You flip in the hand, and typically there won't be a wrist rotation. But with this one, you do flip in the hand, and there is still a wrist rotation. So I'll actually give that a major plus in my book. That's pretty cool. As for the rest of the figure, overall, pretty plain, typical Voyager class articulation. There is a slight ankle pivot out, which we typically do not see. So I give that a plus there. I don't think I'm ever going to use it, but still quite nice there. Also, another plus, which you'll see, of course, when the figure comes back around, but they actually filled in the space between the shoulder and the main torso. You can actually see there is some right there. Typically, they don't do that. Typically, there's just kind of a gap there. So I'm actually really glad they took the time to detail some mechanical detailing and fill in that space, which is pretty cool. I'm really glad. So overall, a pretty good figure. I highly recommend, of course. Probably which one's my favorite? I'm still tied between the Earthrise and the Stu Series one, because again, they do both have pluses and minuses. I do prefer the shield on the Earthrise one, but I prefer the pistols on this version. And overall, of course, the clear plastic, I like it blue rather than the clear on the Earthrise one. So again, overall pluses and minuses. Of course, I know a lot of people just despise the Earthrise trick mode on Ironhide. It was okay in my opinion. I never really hated it that much. Of course, the feet did stick out at the end, so I think they definitely did fix some things. Of course, some things are still a bit of a problem. So of course, they did kind of exchange a few problems. It's not perfect, but it's still a very good figure. Let me know what you think of this figure in the comments section down below. Hope you enjoyed this review. Of course, let me know down in the comments what is your favorite Ironhide, the Earthrise, the Siege, or the Stu Series. And that is pretty much it for this review, so I'll see you next time.